Today we are making trays with Eco Resin and comparing 3 different coloring techniques. I'm using this simple tray mold. It's deep with a smooth glossy finish and a distinct rim. Let's see how these techniques differentiate the final look. I already have 3 measures of resin plaster ready and it's going to be mixed with 1 measure of water. I will mix it thoroughly for about a minute until no lumps remain. You might notice the plaster looks a bit thick. Sometimes measuring powder by volume can be tricky if it's packed too tightly in the scoop. And Eco Resin is sensitive to those proportions. I will add a little water so that I can get a fluid consistency for the pour. For this first tray, we are going for a banana leaf palette. I'm dropping the ink at a distance because I want a streaky marbled finish. I will just give this a light stir, careful not to blend the colors too much. We don't have much time before it sets, so let's pour. I'll start from one direction and move across. I gave it a little swirl out of habit, but honestly it's a gamble since I can't see what's happening on the face down side at all. Now we let this cure. This cures really fast. It has been 15 minutes and you can see the condensation on the cover because of the release of heat and moisture from the tray. Wow, look at that texture. I love the divide between the darker and the lighter parts. Resin plaster is a little off-white itself, which is working with our color palette. The sides look fabulous, almost like little green flames leaping up. The back is more yellow. I suspect the lighter pigments floated to the top with the water just before it set. There's a slight texture on the back, but we'll sand that down later. The mold stayed perfectly clean. This was a good pour. After a quick soapy water clean, we are moving to a classic monochromatic palette, using both liquid pigment and mica powder. For this technique, I am measuring out 3 separate batches, each mixed at the standard ratio of 2.5 parts casting powder to 1 part water. It is not possible to get actual black with pigment. So to get the darkest grey without upsetting the chemistry, I have actually swapped a few grams of water for the liquid pigment to keep the ratios exact. Unlike marbling, I want these mixes even. So I am blending the pigment into the water before adding the powder. I'm also measuring the mica pigment by weight so that I don't go over 5% of the mix. It might hamper the setting of the eco resin. I don't have a split pour cup, so I will improvise the pour by squishing these 3 silicone containers to keep the color streams distinct yet blending when they hit the tray. This side looks much more muted and smoky now that it's dry. It looks like heavy rain clouds on a collision course. I love the wispy nature of it. There's no crisp boundary. I'm a little disappointed that the mica shimmer was subdued by the resin, but the nebulous effect is brilliant. I think this technique would work really well with colors which are in high contrast with each other. For our third technique, let's get colorful. I will use 6 fluorescent pigments to create 6 eco resin even tone mixes, which will come together in a splashy abstract pattern across the tray. Next, I'll prepare the tinted water for each batch in advance. This saves time between pours. meaning the only gap will be approximately the 1 minute you need to stir each mix. Let's prepare the first mix. I feel the color is way too light, so I will add one more drop. I think I might have to add another drop to all the other colors as well. Let's start pouring. The process is simple. I will mix and pour, keeping it as random and splashy as possible, slowly covering the entire face of the tray. Oops, just spilled some colored water. That's messed up the ratio, so I'll pour the other colors and fix this one a bit later. The tray has cured and it really looks very much like melting ice cream. There is some flashing here that seems easy enough to remove. But as I am breaking it off, it's actually chipping the sides a bit, which isn't great. I'll stop here and sand the rest down later for a better finish. The crisp white of the casting powder has given lovely pastel tones to the colors. I was worried about air pockets forming where the different mixes met, but luckily it's smooth. It's perfect. It's a very subtle, playful effect. Love it. I waited a couple of days for the trays to dry completely. I'm wet sanding the backs to remove any texture and also repair any edge flashing before sealing. With the base sanded and the edges trimmed, we will seal these trays. For the top coat, I am using epoxy resin. It's a bit cold today, so the resin is being quite viscous and putting up a fight. I thought a thicker resin would stay on the rim better, but I might have waited too long. It is too hard to handle and it's making a sticky mess. I actually had a bit of a heat gun fight with it to get it to level out. Honestly, this isn't the proper way to seal a large surface, so feel free to jump ahead to the review. For those staying, I continued with the other two trays, but it was a struggle. Because of the cold, I had to keep heating the resin, but that extra heat was actually accelerating the cure and cutting my work time even shorter. Since I was already at the limit, I decided to lean into the texture. I kept the rim as level as possible but played around with the finish on the larger surface to see if a bumpy look might actually match the mood of the tray. Let's see if this self-levels. Though in my experience, resin only ever self-levels when you do not want it to. Looking back, I realize my habit of working on smaller objects got in the way of my practical crafting sense. I usually wait for my epoxy to become viscous to get that perfect dome. But for a larger seal, I should have started with a fresh pour. This would have coated the surface easily, allowing me to save the thicker resin solely for that soft rounded detail on the rim of the tray. I've applied these lessons to my later tray projects, which I've linked in the description if you'd like to see how they turned out. My resin coating for the top of the trays has cured. For the sides and the back, I'm using a simpler glossy sealant just to protect the surface. My Eco Resin trinket trays are ready. Each has a different look, color palette, and even a different texture in its resin finishing coat. While this ice cream tray has a level resin finish, the banana leaf marbling tray does seem to have some bubbles, but nothing that takes away from its overall look. And I'm loving the undulating rumble of resin on this cumulus nimbus tray. It is totally vibing with the brooding color scheme. If you want to try these, I would recommend waiting a few extra minutes for the resin to thicken between pours for the splash effect for better definition. For marbling, I'd suggest harmonious colors, pouring in one direction and skipping the final swirl to keep the pattern crisp. But for the split pour, strongly recommend contrasting colors. Pouring eco resin on a flat surface is a different beast compared to deep molds. Check out my Eco Resin Lab playlist for more techniques and project ideas. I hope this fuels your imagination. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.